Welcome back to Talon Talk. This is episode 31. Today we have Amy Taylor, UNF alum and former swimming great for the Ospreys. Taylor is serving on the front lines during COVID-19, so we want to catch up with her and see what the demands are and how she's doing as a nurse. Thank you for what you're doing for communities now, and thank you for representing UNF very well. So when she was at UNF, Taylor was breaking records in the pool in a number of events. Taylor had a memorable 2016 CCSA Championship, making the most out of her final events as an Osprey. And during that time, she set the 200 fly, the 1650 free, 1000 free school record while contributing to the new 400 medley relay record. So 3 times she was named CCSA Swimmer of the Week. She was a 4-time member of the CCSA All-Academic Team too, so something special right there for sure. We'll talk a little bit about that, but we'll also begin today talking about her work on the front lines. Thanks for taking the time to talk today, Amy.
Thanks for having me.
So, we just talked a little bit before we got going here. Just summarize real quick how long you've been a nurse and kind of your path to that profession and your academic background.
Okay, so I have actually been a nurse only 9 months now. I started back in July. And so originally when I graduated from UNF in 2016, I was actually a public health major and knew I wanted to work in healthcare, didn't really know what I wanted to do. Even when I graduated, I was still kind of undecided, but I had thrown around the idea of being a nurse in the past, and finally I settled on nursing. So I actually moved to South Florida for a couple years, got my nursing degree, and then just recently moved back up here in July to work. So
go back into that. What was you started in public health, and that is a broader degree. I know a lot of people get health science or public health degrees. And what was the inspiration to pursue nursing?
honestly, so there's actually not much healthcare. There's my immediate family, they're not healthcare workers. I didn't really know a lot about the profession. Oddly enough, it comes back to when I was just a little kid. I think I told my parents I had maybe like a toys that were like a stethoscope, and I told my parents like, I'm gonna be a doctor. And my parents were like, maybe you shouldn't be a doctor. Have you ever heard of what a nurse is? And from that moment, I was like, oh, I'm gonna be a nurse, and just kind of kept it with it my whole life. And finally, I probably took till college to actually explore what nursing was. And it just kind of seemed like a cool profession. You don't have to sit at a desk all day. You're helping people. And it just ended up being everything that made sense in my life. So
That's often the story for a lot of people. I mean, they start out as something as a kid and they like something and they're curious about it. And lo and behold, 20 years down the road, if they play their cards right, they're doing that as their profession. So congrats on that. Congrats on making that happen too, and becoming a nurse, because I know that's definitely a lot of hard work. And for a lot of the nursing students that are athletes, I'm sure you can vouch to how hard that would be.
Very hard. I couldn't imagine.
How was nursing school? How was getting that taken care of? And then you were down in South Florida and you came back to Jacksonville. Were you trying to make that happen?
Yeah. So originally when I moved down to South Florida, the intention was I had lived in Jacksonville for 4 years, and I was thinking, I'm going to go explore different areas. And after living down there for 2 years, I mean, it was a great experience, but it just made me reflect and realize how much I miss Jacksonville and how much I love this area. So at least to start out my job and start my career, I knew I needed to come back. And that's kind of what brought me back up here. As far as nursing school itself, yeah, it was a difficult 2 years. It was very difficult, but it's always, you can always get through that. So I did it, and then now I'm reaping the benefits. So
what was it about Jacksonville that you kind of reflected on and really wanted to be a part of again?
So of course, a lot of my close friends here, a lot of my ex-teammates, now very close friends, were up here still. So I always missed them. Just the connections I made were great, but just couldn't replace those people in my life. And then realizing that Jacksonville is just a special area. You can do anything here. You have the beaches, you have the downtown area. There's so much opportunity on your days off when we don't have coronavirus going on, that you can go out and explore. And I just love the nature of the area. So it really it tied me back in.
Okay. I mean, I think that's a lot of people's perspective on it. And I know, speaking for myself, not being a Floridian and coming to Jacksonville, it's definitely a city that a lot of people don't think of when they think of Florida, but they should, because of the diversity of what's in the city, and whatnot. So you've been in Florida your pretty much your whole life then.
Yeah.
You went to high school in Florida. And then you pursued swimming here, and your brother pursued swimming. Was that always in the family? I read that I think you guys were the first collegiate athletes in your family, though.
So we were definitely the first swimmers. I have a couple cousins
Swimmers,
that
okay.
actually so I had So I had cousins that were track, and then I had one that did basketball. But as far as we were the first swimmers in the family, and our parents just kind of randomly put us in swimming. It actually came down to my brother. He was looking for sports, and my parents wanted us in sports, and randomly my mom was like, oh, he was pretty good when I taught him how to swim. So we both started the swim team, and we never did anything else, it seemed like. So yeah, it was kind of random that we became swimmers. But yeah, my parents really pushed. They wanted us to be athletes, and the goal was always college.
So we'll get into that swimming a little bit more later, but obviously very successful, 2 Division I swimmers, and your brother swimming at Florida. That's a really great accomplishment too. What were so your parents kind of led you in that, kind of nudged you in that area. What was their perspective of when you became a nurse, and what's your brother doing?
So yeah, they're super excited that I'm a nurse, of course.
Mm-hmm.
They're proud. But as far as career choice, that was always my decision. They would have supported me in any role. But of course they were excited. And then, they're excited now. You see a lot of people, maybe even more so my age, that aren't really working at the moment or don't know what their future holds. So of course they're very happy that I'm stable in that sense. And then as my brother, actually, he's kind of working in a different role. I guess you could say the Frontlines. He's an essential worker right now. He's actually an assistant manager at Publix, so a big grocery chain.
Yeah, both of you guys are putting in hours that a lot of people, would be very appreciative to have, but obviously it's a lot of hard work right now. And that's a perfect transition. So you start as a nurse, and this is, you're working as a nurse before the COVID-19 outbreak, and now you're also working as a nurse during that period. Kind of explain that transition time when things started to shift for your job.
Yeah, so like I said, I've only been a nurse for 9 months now, and never in my wildest dreams, even imagining my first year as a nurse, did I think I would be in the middle of a pandemic. Just no one saw it really coming that I know of. And so it really started shifting probably originally we were looking at Italy, and you're like, well, okay, there's coronavirus over there. It's probably, you kind of think it's not going to happen to me. It's not going to happen here. And of course it does. So as soon as we started getting those first cases, just in the United States in general, suddenly everything felt very different. Hospitals are pretty much locked down at the moment. There's one entrance, one way in. Employees are getting their temperatures taken. We're being asked screening questions to make sure that we're not showing symptoms. And then we're wearing masks right now. And so it's just super locked down. It feels a lot more stressful in general, just for that reason. And this is something that usually we have, we're treating things every day. But usually we know the treatment plans, we know what to expect. Now we're looking at coronavirus and we don't really know what to expect right now. So, one thing they're saying is, well, maybe we don't have a lot of coronavirus in the hospitals right now, but it's kind of like, when will we? Not if we will. It could be when, and we don't know what that day will be. So it's pretty crazy. A lot of the patients we were seeing, elective surgeries are shut down right now. So the patients we are seeing have to be there. So it's kind of almost a sicker level of patients, it feels like, on the normal floors, and then the corona floors are locked down. They actually have special maintenance went in there and turned those units upside down. They inserted new ventilation to make sure that the air is not going into the hospital. So we just kind of look, and it just looks, it looks like a scene out of a movie. There's just, new ventilation going into every single room. And then, of course, the workers are completely gowned up and face shields and masks. You can't even, you have friends on the unit and you can't even tell who's who because you just see their eyes. So, yeah, it's different.
That's a really good summarization too. And I really wouldn't have thought about the air ventilation part of it. So do you remember that kind of first day that, wow, this is not my normal routine of going into work? Like, this is a different process?
Yeah, so that kind of happened. We get daily email updates, and I think I had been off for a few days just because that's how my schedule works. And suddenly we were getting new emails saying, big red letters, update. This is these are the new changes. And every day we've been getting those emails since. So it's been about it's probably been a month now we've been getting these new emails, and every day something might change. But definitely that first week, that was suddenly that was when the hospital initially kind of closed down and all of the entrances were blocked. And then same with, one day it was patients can have 2 visitors. And then 2 days later, it's there will be no visitors unless we absolutely have to have this visitor in the hospital. So yeah, it's just constantly evolving at the moment.
So what was that like for you mentally, to kind of realize that it's not going to be my normal work environment? Was it hard to focus on the jobs at hand, or did you adjust pretty well?
So I'll say it was scary. It was definitely scary. Reading the emails, looking at the news, realizing the reality of the situation. I definitely felt the stress, and I think I felt very stressed. But then, of course, going into work was actually different. Going into work, I actually felt kind of the same as I usually do. You're still doing your job, and you just have to do it to the best of your ability. So it didn't really change how I was at work, but definitely in my mind, it was hard to kind of cope with everything going on.
So does the hospital and just the medical frontline industry right now, do they recommend anything for nurses or anything for doctors that are, working at hospitals? What are they saying for them to kind of keep themselves safe? And do they need make extra precaution to stay away from as many people outside of work, or how does that work?
I think that they kind of tell us they're giving us kind of the same thing as you'll hear the government saying, stay home. Stay home, make sure that you're 6 feet apart when you have to go out. But we're not really being given any additional precautions. I think, if anything, nurses and doctors are taking it upon themselves to be even more careful, when they do have to go out to the grocery store, but nothing really specific.
How has it changed your relationship with coworkers and doctors and other nurses? Do you guys feel kind of at the same level of communication, same level of closeness, or is it even closer now, or you're kind of bonding over the challenge, or how's that going?
I personally feel like there's kind of a more teamwork feel. Even just without saying, we've always been great at teamwork. We all kind of work together really well, at least in my area. But I kind of do feel that extra closeness, and I feel us kind of sometimes leaning on each other. We'll talk about what we see in the news, and I think it actually kind of helps us cope with the changes, to kind of understand, and just having each other to talk about it. And then, when you're working in the areas, people outside the hospital, they don't really understand what we're seeing, and how different what we're seeing is compared to what we've seen in the past. I've heard some kind of almost horror stories from different friends that work in the field and what they've been seeing as well. But I think it's great because we're there for each other and we understand, versus, maybe someone who, like I said, who doesn't work in the healthcare.
Mm-hmm. How is that? I'm sure people ask you a lot and are asking you similar questions I'm asking you now. How is that explaining it to people not in healthcare, not that aren't nurses? How is it explaining your work to them right now?
So I think people definitely want to know. A lot of people are definitely asking. As you've heard, there's like people seem a little bit more appreciative of healthcare workers than maybe they have in the past. They look at us as heroes. I don't like to take the hero term. I don't think that's really a proper term, but explain it to them. I like to think that they that they process what we're saying, but like I said, until you see it firsthand, it's hard to see. It's hard to say, and it's hard to understand for them. Because I want to say, people are like, oh, well, people are sick all the time. And then you're explaining it to them like, no, this sickness is different. It affects the body, like, in ways we didn't expect. And I think it's just hard to comprehend unless you are seeing it, but they do their best.
Yeah. And I'm sure it heightens your level of attentiveness and seriousness about coronavirus as an illness too. It's kind of probably always brewing in your mind as a bigger looming threat because it's more present with you in your daily life. Is there something you've learned about this profession during this period that you didn't think you would learn as quickly as you have?
I would say it's something I think I knew and I've realized, but these people, like the nurses, the doctors, they just adapt so well. And, you really see, you do see that we're human. And I think I realized more how human we are. But yeah, you definitely realize how adaptable your coworkers are to, and I don't know what's going on at their home or the sacrifices they're making, but right now at work, I see everyone making a different type of sacrifice, whether it's like someone not seeing their children, someone not seeing their parents for this length of time. But you just kind of realize how awesome everyone you work with is. And I think I appreciate them a lot more. I appreciate them before, but appreciate the sacrifices they make even more now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's going to bring out, the feistiest and, an element of everybody in order to address it. So going into your kind of typical schedule in the week, how many days are you working? We talked about that a little bit. How many days are you working? How long are your shifts? And then where are you working in the hospital?
So this is a typical nurse schedule because it might sound like not a lot, but I work 3 days a week and typically have 4 days off throughout the week. So I work 12-hour shifts, which realistically are more so 13-hour shifts once everything's said and done. And then, of course, there's always opportunities to pick up overtime on top of that. So I could do 4 shifts in a week if I wanted to, or up to 5. I am currently working in a progressive care unit. The way that I explain that is we don't get the super sick patients that would be in the intensive care units. but we don't have, the super stable patients either. We're kind of that in between. And I tend to work with a lot of pre and post-surgical cardiac patients at the moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know we touched on that too, and before, and your interest in working in that area, being a nurse. What's that been like? What's that experience like? Have you enjoyed it?
Yeah, I actually I've loved most days of it. It's been stressful. They say the first couple years of nursing is extremely stressful, but there's good days, and it's definitely shown me that I'm exactly where I want to be, and I've loved the whole experience so far.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure it's very rewarding as well. Do you want to continue, hopefully, working in that specific area?
Yeah, I definitely want to continue in this type of area, and haven't really thought too hard where I want to go next. I think throughout my career, I want to get as much experience in different areas as I can, but definitely for now, I'm very happy about where I am.
Mm-hmm. So just talking about coronavirus and being a nurse and seeing it at a different level than the general population, what are some kind of recommendations, if you have them, that you think people should take into consideration, or additional thoughts about staying healthy that you've picked up on maybe?
So I think the biggest thing that I hope people realize is that even as, the beaches are reopening, and you might hear in the news that we're starting to flatten the curve, which is a positive. But just because we're flattening the curve, it doesn't mean that we've found a cure to coronavirus. Coronavirus is still out there, and, even as the curve flattens, people are still going to be at risk. So I think it's important that, continue to maintain that distance, continue to only really do what's necessary at the moment until we can really finish this battle and get closer to the finish line at least. Also, a lot of people do say, well, I'm not elderly and I'm not sick, so coronavirus won't affect me the same way. There are people who probably have coronavirus and don't realize that they're asymptomatic. They're not showing any type of the illness, but then, that you might have a 20-year-old who is, and it could attack that person even though they're healthy and they're, everything that you would think wouldn't lead to them getting super sick, but they can still get super sick. So the virus doesn't discriminate by age. It doesn't discriminate by health status. It can happen to anyone. So just be careful out there.
Yeah, and that seems to be one of the weird things about the coronavirus, is that it seems almost random, like
Mm-hmm.
how you respond. It seems very random how that specific person responds to it. Like, for example, if you take somebody that is of the same age and has like the same VO2 max, like they can breathe the same, they're in the same
Mm-hmm.
general well-being and health, and it doesn't affect them, and then one person is getting a really bad case of it. Is there any kind of rationale for why that is, or is it just kind of still to be determined, do you think?
Yeah, so as far as I know, it's still to be determined.
Mm-hmm.
Um, a lot of what we typically treat, we have so much research and all this, it's, evidence-based practice leading us to the way that we treat typical illnesses. So you kind of have, you see a patient come in with a heart attack, and you kind of have a roadmap of what to expect. But with coronavirus, we don't really know what to expect. From my understanding, what a lot of the doctors are doing is they're just gathering all this information from different parts of the world, putting it together, trying to figure out what they think is working the best. And it almost kind of feels like a scramble sometimes because, like I said, we don't have that evidence-based just yet. We don't have enough of it. So it's kind of, we're just doing our best with that.
It's like, what are the patterns? We're just like, you have to pool all that information and somehow kind of, all right, there's a dot. I'm trying to connect this dot right now.
Exactly.
And that's a lot as it is, let alone handling the day-to-day, the people that already need treatment, already need care, and so forth. So if we take a look back to before you became a nurse and before you got into this situation, obviously I'm sure you'd never imagined it, but you were also in kind of another pretty grueling environment. You were a swimmer, which is really grueling for a lot of people, especially cardiovascularly. How is being an athlete and in that specific type of athlete, how's that prepared you?
It's definitely, swimming gave me a lot of discipline over the years. It taught me a lot of discipline, which is very important in my career, from school to now my current job role. And then I think I mentioned it before, how important adapting to your environment is. And I think with swimming, each day and each competition could bring something new. So you kind of have to adapt to the day-to-day practices. And then also in nursing, you have to adapt to the day-to-day, what you're doing, and adapt to your different patients. So it definitely gave me that. I think it's really made me a hard worker, and swimming, you can't be lazy, and nursing, you absolutely cannot be lazy. So that's been great qualities that I think have helped excel me in my career.
Do you still get up at those 4:30 wake up calls anymore if you have a choice?
So fun thing, I actually work night shifts. So
okay.
Technically I am awake at 4:30 a.m., 5:30 a.m.
Yeah.
But on my days that I'm off, I do transition to a kind of normal day schedule, and absolutely I do not get up at those hours. I love to sleep in. I need like 8 to 10 hours to function. So yeah, no, you won't find me up at those hours otherwise.
Yeah, that's so do you like that? Do you like the night shifts? I mean, it's been two spectrums of it. You've been in the morning, now you've been at night. Yeah.
Yeah, I do like the night shifts, and I have to say that as well because I chose it. I brought it upon myself. Does my body love night shift? I don't think so. We're definitely kind of adjusting still to that. But as far in my personal mind, I love night shift for so many reasons. I love my team at night, and I just can't imagine switching to days and leaving them.
Have you been in the night shift this entire period that you started as a nurse?
When I first started, the first 3 months, I trained on day shifts.
Okay.
Day shifts are a little bit hectic in a different way compared to night shifts. They both kind of had their pros and cons, but so I've been on night shifts for about 6 months now.
Okay. And so going back to swimming, you got those early wake up calls. You really progressed a lot at UNF and became one of the greatest swimmers that we've had in especially our Division I history. What allowed you to be able to swim so many different events well? Because that's one of the intriguing things.
Yeah, so that I feel like a lot of my events actually came by accident. And I had distance. I was recruited as a distance swimmer. At the time, my backstroke was decent. I want to say my first couple of years, I probably swam some of the dual meets. I probably raced backstroke, but all 4 of my years, we had some really good backstrokers. So there was no really reason for me to go further with that. And then probably right before I signed on to UNF, my butterfly had actually just started improving, and that probably ended up, the 200 butterfly was probably my favorite event. I just enjoyed swimming it. I enjoyed racing it. So I pushed really hard to become one of our flyers as well. And that kind of came about, I want to say there's a specific practice one time. No one really realized how my butterfly had improved, and we did a practice one day, and I raced like a 200 fly and, you know, impressed everyone. And then I kind of voiced that that's something I wanted to, you know, continue doing. So I got that on board, and, you know, then couldn't, you know, never looked back with that one. And then as far as like my sprinting, I think that really came out of my work actually in the weight room. I started getting stronger. So I didn't really ever sprint on its own, but to be in relays and be able to help out my team in that sense, that really, I think, came out of just getting stronger and getting more muscle.
Going into kind of you had that 200 fly record, and then talk about the time difference that I had. I believe it was your your 1000 free, and it was a split within your 1650 that you dropped, I think 3 or 4 seconds. How does like a distance swimmer really improve that much in their time? How can you cut that much?
I think you'd have to ask my coaches for that.
Yeah.
I was fortunate, you know, senior year, I had Ian and my assistant coach, Haley. Both of them had a lot of knowledge in distance. They had gotten to kind of know they really got to know like how to train me the best. I couldn't tell you, but they figured it out. So I think that really helped. And you just work a lot with splits. When you're swimming a lot of distance, you know, you swim the 1000, you swim the mile, you want to stay consistent with your times, and you know, just messing up 150, you know, one being like 30 seconds compared to the next one being 32 seconds, you know, that pushes you back. So they worked a lot with just being consistent with me and getting the right workouts during training season. And then also I have to give it to like my whole distance training group. You know, they pushed me every single day, and it just kind of all came together and worked out that way. I don't even, you know, I can't pinpoint it, but just a collaboration of all of us got that time drop.
How do you stay consistent from like 50 to 50 within a 1650? Do you truly feel like I'm 45 seconds slower than I should be? Is it because of turns? Is it, you know, I mean, you're probably not even needing to do a turn, but yeah.
So staying consistent, it really comes down to training. You know, we specifically will do different sets during practice, and we have to hold the time. And your coach is timing, you know, letting you know you're off, you know, you need to go faster. And during the race, a lot of it comes down to actually, you know, the coach is signaling to you and letting you know, like, if you're on pace or not. I think you did a podcast recently with Ian, and he mentioned it, that our counters are making certain movements with like the counting, you know, you have this number that's letting you know what lap you're on, and they shake it a certain way, and that's going to let you know where you're at. So that's important as well.
Well, thanks for listening to that one, though. By the way, I know, I know that Ian is a big trivia and podcast guy, so I knew that he would enjoy it thoroughly. So I'm glad that I got him on.
We talked about it recently.
That's really funny, and congrats to him, by the way, newly married as well.
Oh yeah, beautiful.
Do you have a favorite record of yours? Do you have a favorite swim? Because obviously you had 3 individual and then 1 that you shared.
Yeah, so I would say my favorite's definitely the mile. That is something I got close to so many times and just didn't quite get until that senior year, and that was actually my final mile. So it was a last chance to actually break that record, and it was one that I wanted from freshman year. So I think I wanted all the records, but I wanted that one more than the rest. And so to finally get it my senior year was super exciting. But I love all my records, and, you know, I hope people break them because I want to see the team improve, but I also love having them. And I think one thing people actually don't realize is all 3 of my records were actually broken in the same final session.
I know.
The mile and 200 flyer on the same day. So
it's crazy.
That's actually, I don't know, I just cherish that. And I love that whole, that's such a, like, that was a highlight night of my life. So.
Why was it that day? How did you come out and perform like that, especially with the extra pressure knowing that this is my senior year?
We trained the whole year knowing that that was going to be it. You don't get a lot of opportunity to swim the mile. A lot of the dual meets actually end up being 1000s. And so we knew, the whole season that was going to be the last chance, and that would be the night, because that's the night that you're tapered, you're rested, you're suited up, so you're ready to perform your best. So we knew that was so we took that in consideration when I was training. And then like I said, I have to really give it out to my coaches, because I think they really made everything possible. And I just followed along and trusted in everything that we were doing, which led to accomplishing that.
How did you end up swimming at UNF?
So I was recruited back in high school. I want to say the coaches then, they actually had probably come to a meet and saw me swim, and they took interest. I had actually never heard of the University of North Florida, unfortunately, but they reached out, and I researched the school. I came on a trip, and it was just, it was no question after the trip that I loved the university, I loved the team, and I definitely saw a future here. So after that, that's how like I said, no question. And I signed probably right after my trip.
So you have 2 people in your immediate family swimming. Yourself and your brother. Do you guys ever get out and compete, out in the water, or how's that been? Do you guys share tricks or tricks of the trade?
So my brother, when I was swimming, he was always there for advice. But as far as racing, he is absolutely out of my league. He's so much better than I am. He was also a distance swimmer. We did share some similar different strokes and whatnot, but we'll swim sometimes. We'll get in a pool together, and it's more so like we're just like timing each other and seeing what we can do, but I cannot race him. He's always just will be so much better than me. So I wish.
What's the psyche of a distance swimmer? It must be a DNA thing, I guess, too. Yeah.
I have no idea.
You got to be tough, I would think.
Yeah, I think, anything, you have to be tough. Sprinters have a special mindset. There's actually I think there's some funny videos back from like Olympics past where they talk about which stroke you're actually like, how crazy you are versus what event you swim. But I don't know. We just are what we are.
There's a lot of those funny comparisons. I know a lot of the common ones is they'll say pitchers or the wacky ones, or punters or kickers.
I think they say.
Yeah. Okay. That's interesting. I've actually never heard that. And I follow swimming a little bit, but that's interesting. So right now, when you have days off, what's your favorite way to pass the time?
Right now, you mean like with the corona going on, passing time? Right now, I try to get in a workout every day and do my best. It's great to get your body moving. I think that really helps mentally. And otherwise, I'm just trying to explore, hobbies that I have. My apartment's cleaner than it's ever been. I'm keeping it that way. So love that. It was not clean prior to corona. And then, like I said, just exploring different hobbies, trying to be creative and, do the weird things I do. I really I really enjoy like crocheting and
All right.
working with what's this thing called cross stitch. So
Now's the time to do those things.
yeah,
You have it.
exactly. Took on a few little new projects for myself.
Absolutely. So anything else you want to add? Throw in there words of encouragement for anybody.
Let's see. Just words of encouragement are just, pursue your passions. And if you run into a roadblock or something that you didn't expect, just do your best to adapt and be positive every day. And that's really going to drive you to reaching your goals.
Great. Well, thank you, Amy. Thank you. Congrats on, again, a couple years back on your career here at UNF, but your continued success. And please stay safe, and we'll be in touch with you.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Amy. Great time talking today. Your efforts really count. We can't overstate that. And thank you for continuing to represent the Ospreys. So stay safe. And before we take off, continue to follow everything that's going on in UNF athletics as we continue to post content on our social media accounts, the following places: UNF Ospreys on Twitter, along with all the sports-specific accounts, North Florida Ospreys on Facebook, UNF Ospreys on Instagram, and on unfospreys.com. So thanks for listening. We'll see you guys here next week. We'll have another great interview lined up. Julian Bradley, former men's tennis player, and he's now playing professionally, so we're catching up with him and seeing what his life is like right now. Swoop.